Hello nerds! Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is your week in Nerdom, your twice weekly source for all of the nerd news headlines, all of the stuff that is fit for discussion. Let's hit the intro and then we're going to talk about all of the Let's jump right into music news, guys. We've got a lot of ground to cover and not a whole lot of time to cover it, so we're just gonna hit the ground rolling. First thing is Tool just made an announcement. For those of you who watch the Joe Rogan podcast, for those of you who just pay really close attention to Tool's social media accounts, they actually made two announcements that Maynard made live, obviously before the Joe Rogan podcast went up, but most of us heard it because of the Joe Rogan Experience. First, we got the name of the new Tool album. It is Fear Inoculum, and we also got an announcement that Tool's back catalog, from what I understand their entire back catalog, is going to be going live on streaming services sometime next month, sometime in August. He was not really giving with the date exactly, so it very well could be up right now. I just don't do the streaming that often outside of YouTube, so I don't think that was the case. I'm fairly certain the announcement is for later in the month of August, but that's still pretty awesome for those of you trying to get your Tool fix on your streaming platforms. Now is the first time you will be able to do such things. Next, we're looking at a new music video coming from a new album. Dragonforce is finally releasing the album that they've been working on for so long that if you are a fan of Dragonforce, you probably have watched them write and record this album on Herman Lee's Twitch channel. The name of the video is Highway to Oblivion. The name of the new album is Extreme Power Metal, and that seems to be right in line with everything we have from Dragonforce so far, so that's pretty awesome. I'm not as big of a Dragonforce fan as I once was, partially due to their new vocalist. The vocalist that they had on the Through Fire and Flames album, I can't remember the name of the album now, Superpower Beatdown, something. He now is singing for Skid Row, Sebastian Bach's old band, and they have a new vocalist who I haven't looked up because I'm just not a fan, just not the biggest fan. Dude is not quite as versatile as their previous vocalist was, so it kind of kills the experience a little bit, but either way, it's still Dragonforce, and Herman Lee and Sam Totem are still some of the most insane guitar players in the genre, so definitely check out the video and let's talk about it down in the comments. You can also find the link down in the description. Next is about Metallica. Kind of. It seems that their management, and very likely, though they're denying it, the band itself, has been caught doing some shady business. Actually, in actuality, more like has been caught in cahoots with Live Nation and Ticketmaster, who were doing some shady business. Now, let me explain. There was a congressman, Bill Pascrell from New Jersey, who called this out when he found out about it this week, and it seems to go back all the way to 2016. So let me paint you a picture real quick. If you, say, are trying to get tickets to Metallica, let's say, and the venue has sold out, so they're going to play, like here in Colorado, they play at the Pepsi Center, or something along those lines, the Bronco Stadium, wherever. We'll use Pepsi Center for this example. So they're going to play the Pepsi Center, and it sells out in 30 minutes. Well, in days past, you were just kind of SOL. You just had to deal with that fact, or you had to go to the venue the day of the concert and maybe pay $500 for tickets that would have costed you $100 or something along those lines. Now, Live Nation and Ticketmaster have created reseller online websites that take those tickets, so people who bought those tickets can then resell them back to this reseller website, who then ups the price a bit so they can make a little bit more profit and sells them again to another person in the public. So if I bought tickets and then my great grandma dies and I can't make it to the concert because that's the day of her funeral, so I sell my tickets back to, and it wasn't really known immediately that this was owned by Live Nation and or Ticketmaster, so I was just selling it to a third party. That third party, who we know now is owned by Ticketmaster and Live Nation, that third party then again is trying to make a little bit of a profit, so they jack up the price a little bit and sell my $100 tickets now for $300 tickets. So that's kind of the way it has been up until about 2016, it would seem. Now they have just been caught and have Live Nation and Ticketmaster have both fessed up to doing this. Not with everyone, but with their higher selling artists. They reserve a select few, select being approximately 4,400 tickets per show, which comes out to roughly 88,000 tickets throughout the course of the WorlWired Metallica concert, the tour that is going on right now. 88,000 people were unable to buy, to attempt at least, to buy tickets at face value because they took those tickets and gave them directly to the reseller, who then jacked up the prices because they knew those shows were going to sell out, which is pretty freaking shady. Well, they got called out on it, and I couldn't find a resolution. I was looking into this, and there was no, well, now they're going to do this instead, or there was no, well, these people are bringing up charges against them. Just the Congressman Bill Pascrell is trying to pass legislation that makes this illegal. And I feel like that's kind of jumping a couple of steps. I feel like there should be probably some prosecution brought up against these people, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if that's really a thing that we can do. That is the news piece, though, and we're moving on to our last bit from music, which has to do with Protest the Hero, one of my favorite bands here on the channel. If you're new to watching Weekend Nerdom, then you don't know that yet, but man, I love Protest the Hero. And they have been working for a little over 2 years now on the proper follow-up to Volition, which came out about 4 years ago, even though they did put out Pacific Myth, but Pacific Myth was kind of an episodic deal. Technically, it was a full record, but it wasn't exactly the same because you got it in chunks instead of all at once. So this is going to be a proper studio record, title to be announced, release date to be announced. Why are we talking about it? Because they finally gave us another update on it last night on their official website. And also, not just on the record, but on vocalist Rody Walker's voice, because the last time we heard from them was about 6 months ago, and Rody had, they as a band had to cancel a few dates because Roddy's voice was acting up. He got surgery, things happened, and as of our last update, he was feeling better and was getting back into the vocal studio. Very, very small bits at a time was the plan, but it seems, according to this update, that was not going to be their the way that they were going to get this done forever, because their vocal producer was going on tour with another band for which he does sound. So Rody apparently just jumped in and finished the vocals, and they are also bringing in an orchestra because they want to make this the, quote, biggest sounding record they've ever done, unquote. I'm super excited about all of this. And so tentatively, they are saying that we should see this record in our hot little hands by the end of this year. And also, apparently, Roddy's vocals sound a little more angry and a little better somehow. If you listen to Protest and you're a fan of that style of music, then that's kind of saying something. But that, guys, is all we have for music news. Let's jump right into TV news. And in TV news, this is going to be an interesting section for today's episode. First up, we have an announcement I feel like we've brought up before on the show that I Know What You Did Last Summer is getting turned into a series over on Amazon. If we haven't brought it up previously, then we're bringing it up now. Apparently, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the slasher flick from, I think it was 1997, with Jennifer Love Hewitt and a bunch of the teen heartthrob types from the time, is being turned into a series. And we all know that the Scream series on MTV is so amazing that we understand why this is happening, right? Well, okay, maybe not really. So, apparently, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the pilot episode was reportedly, according to Deadline, supposed to be directed by James Wan, because James Wan just can't help himself and he has to be creating something scary all the time. Quote unquote scary. Well, James Wan then took to Facebook, not necessarily his page, but took to Facebook to squash this rumor, saying that he is not going to be directing this episode, though there is apparently still one of the John Wick 3 writers attached to this project, so it's going to be an interesting development as it goes on, so we will continue keeping tabs on it and keeping you updated, because horror is a thing that nerds like, and I like talking about it, so there you go. Next, though, on the list, we're talking about Carnivale Row. Carnivale Row, for those that don't know, because you haven't watched The Boys yet on Amazon Prime, since we're staying in this Amazon vein, Carnivale Row is going to be the next kind of big series that they're hyping up over on Amazon Prime. Well, much in the same vein that we got The Boys announced a season 2 about 2 days before season 1 even got posted up live, we are now a month away from Carnivale Row, and they got renewed for season 2 before their season 1 goes up. So again, we're a month away from seeing season 1. This kind of is a little bit more of a meta question on the Amazon front. Do you guys think that this is a sign that Amazon is just this confident in these series that they can say, hey, we're gonna throw a lot more money at this because we really think you guys are gonna like it? Or is it just potentially Amazon allowing showrunners to tell at least a bigger chunk of the story before they know it's a hit? Because generally speaking, like a first season, you can get a first season greenlit, usually at a smaller series or smaller episode count than the rest of your show is going to be. So like back when TV was the big thing, usually a season 1 was a handful of episodes, about 8 to 10 episodes, and then if you were a hit, then season 2 you probably got somewhere close to 24 episodes. Now in the age of streaming, Netflix has set the scale so that each season is approximately 10 to 13 episodes, but then if it doesn't do well, it unceremoniously just gets canceled, or if they don't like it, or if they want to take their platform in a different direction, they just kind of get rid of things. Well, Amazon doesn't seem to be taking up that torch. They are throwing money at things that they seem to be confident in, and that's my take on it, is this is a show of confidence, because if you haven't watched The Boys, we will talk about that. I'm trying to get it to the point where we can talk about that. So definitely stay tuned to Generally Nerdy for that, but it definitely leaves a cliffhanger. So maybe they were just allowing the showrunner for The Boys to at least complete that story arc that we got with that cliffhanger. Maybe it's a similar thing with Carnivale Row. I just think that the quality of The Boys speaks for itself, and they're taking a gamble on renewing it before it airs, and the same thing goes here for Carnivale Row, that they have a strong belief that the quality will speak for itself and that people will attach themselves to this show and want another season, and so they throwing money at it, taking a gamble. More cliches, we're just going to move on. And speaking of Netflix, fans of Lucifer have reason to rejoice right now, because yes, it is still the final season of Lucifer. We are not there. They didn't sign on a new season. This is going to be the last you get of your show. But they just added 6 more episodes to this last season. So it's going from 10 episodes to 16 episodes. I think that, at least in part, this is Netflix experimenting with a longer season format, because they're getting a little bit nervous from the competition because Amazon is throwing so much money at these shows they're confident in, and Disney Plus is about to launch, and so they want to see if there's a way that they can hook people for a little bit longer and get that little bit extra dough. And this is probably a better series to do this with because it does have such a rabid fan base. So we'll see how this pans out. But either way, rejoice, Lucifer fans, for your extra 6 shows. And then our last bit of news for TV comes from The Walking Dead. AMC's official Twitter has released the first teaser for the new series. It still does not officially have a name, but if you watch the trailer, link down in the description, if you watch that trailer, then there's an idea of when it's going to be released. And also, potentially, they're teasing the name of the series, I would imagine, because they say New World so many times. It makes me think, is that going to be the series subtitle? Walking Dead, The New World, something along those lines. But then we also have from a different source, not directly from AMC like the trailer is, but we have from comicbook.com the report that in Virginia, where they are filming this second spinoff, so the third Walking Dead series, second spinoff from the main series, where they're filming it is in Virginia, and the locals and the people who have seen title cards and scripts and such say that the code name for this series is Monument. So is Monument just a code name, just a placeholder, or is that going to be the new subtitle for this series? I want you guys to let me know. Let's talk about that in the comments. Obviously, one of those two is going to catch some ground. Now we're kicking into movie news going right along. Following up with last week's episode, the Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends movies, we got a little bit of a quote from Danny McBride. He said this, and this is the quote. I'm reading it. I apologize if it sounds stilted. When we first were signed up for it, we were going to originally try to do 3 movies back to back. Ultimately, we were kind of all like, let's make sure we can do this one good. Then, when we connected with people, we all decided, let's try to continue what we were going to do. It's just a continuing story that's got a beginning, middle, and end. I'm excited to begin it. The middle is chaos, and the ending is very satisfying. A little of me feels like this is kind of Danny McBride suffering from Lucasitis, because all reports of the original scripting for the first Danny McBride related Halloween movie, said that they killed Michael Myers at the end in the original script. And the studio stepped in and said, maybe we shouldn't do this because franchising options and more money and more movies is a good thing and blah, blah, blah. So they changed the ending so Michael Myers didn't die at the end. So now him saying, we always wanted to do it in 3 movies, kind of to me sounds like George Lucas saying, I always wanted to make 9 Star Wars movies. Maybe the thought existed, but there's no evidence that shows us that those plans existed in anything other than between Danny McBride's ears. So then also, he says later in this same interview that Halloween Ends is not necessarily going to be the end of the franchise. Duh. Again, studio steps in and says, hey, we can franchise these things and make some more money and then have the quality go down exponentially from movie to movie and then reboot the whole thing and create a whole buzz and blah, blah, blah. That sounds a little more true. Either way, we're getting at least 2 more pretty good Halloween movies. I can't speak to their quality until they release, but judging by the first one, I'm excited about it, and let's move on. Next, we're talking about Venom 2, and there's an interesting update on this movie. Andy Serkis is not going to be in the movie, but is apparently in talks to direct the movie, along with Travis Knight, who gave us the Bumblebee movie most recently, though I don't know how serious those talks are because most of the hubbub seems to be surrounding Serkis as the potential director for Venom 2. Also, Sony's trying to pull this trigger really quick because they want to go into active production this fall on the movie so that they can make their scheduled release date of 2021, I believe. Might have been 2020. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was 2020. Next up, we're talking real quick, again, a little bit of horror. Lighthouse is the new A24 movie. For those unfamiliar, A24 is the production company that's been giving us a lot of this art house horror recently. They did Midsummer, they did Hereditary, they're doing this one. I believe they even did The Witch. Although I could be just mistaking that because this movie, The Lighthouse, is from the director and creator of that movie, so that might be where the confusion's coming in. But either way, we're getting a new A24 movie, and this one is Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. That's not necessarily news, that's been known for a while, but we did get our first official trailer for the movie. You can go check that link down in the description. Oh, wow, this is such a weird looking thing, and is to be expected considering the production company and the director. But, like, even in the cinematography for this, there's so much interesting choices just in this really short little trailer. It kind of got me so curious about this movie that I have to go see it on opening night, right? Let me know what you think in those comments down below. And then our last piece of news is a really interesting one that seems to have flown under the radar of most outlets. Denis Villeneuve is remaking Dune. We know this. This is a thing. We also know that recently they finished wrapping within the last 2 weeks approximately. They wrapped production, I should say. So that's all well and good. We're on track to get the movie, but then we got this little bit of interesting news saying that the role of Liet Kynes, or Liet, I really have so much difficulty pronouncing Herbert names, the names in Herbert books, that I honestly, in my head, I say Liet, but I'm sure that's not how you say it when I'm reading the books. So Liet Kynes, the guy who is pretty instrumental in the story of Dune, because he marries a Fremen woman, and that kind of bridges the gap between the House Atreides and the Fremen, and he's also the one trying to terraform Arrakis, and all of these things that he is doing. Apparently, Liet Kynes is going to be a woman in this movie, and from the descriptions that we've seen, that's the only thing about the character that's changed, so potentially there's going to be, she will have married a Fremen man, but then that kind of implies that they're going to change some pretty key elements about the Fremen people. So I don't know where to stand on this one. It's a really interesting development though, and it's very much rumor because I've only gotten it from one source, but still that's an interesting thing to think about, and that's where movies ends for this episode. And that brings us directly into gaming news, and gaming is actually bigger this week than it usually is. I was impressed that I found so much that was worth talking about, because I always find a lot of stuff, and actually if you guys are following me on the Facebooks, then you have started to see a little bit more content, not just because I brought in somebody else to just kind of keep the page active, but also because as I'm doing research for these things, I'm sharing some of the articles that aren't necessarily going to make it into the Week in Nerdom episodes. So I've shared a couple of things throughout the course of the research for today's episode, and this was not one of them. But we're talking about Blair Witch. We've seen the trailers. We just got our first gameplay trailer. Again, link in the description if you want to go check that out. And this looks like a weird combination of the original movie and the first Silent Hill game. And also kind of sort of Fallout, but that's only because we have the dog. There's no science fiction elements to this. It's just the dog is so involved in the story. This trailer, though, makes me think that maybe these phone calls that our main character is taking are not real, that he's not actually talking to a person. That could just be my conspiratorial mind, I don't know, but it's an interesting one. I don't know where to fall. It's definitely going to be scarier than the two movies that exist for this franchise, so there's no doubt in my mind there, because gaming just inherently is a scarier, as a way to tell a scarier story than a movie, because you are involved, you are actively doing the things on screen. Therefore, when something crazy happens, it's more like it's happening to you instead of in front of you. So that part, I really have no worries that it's going to be at least a good jump scare game. But as far as the atmosphere, I didn't have very high hopes. The first half of this trailer kind of gives me some decently high hopes for this game. So we will see as it releases, but that's all we've got there. Next, we're talking about Fortnite. And this one really intrigues me because they're potentially going to be changing up the way they do these big battle royale games, because they're introducing mechs. The official Fortnite Twitter page has been putting up teaser images over the last few days, over the last week approximately, and one of them has a mech. That's an interesting development. I want to see if this gets pulled off well. I might start playing Fortnite again. Not gonna lie, because I really enjoy mech stuff. Mech Warrior was a crazy fun game. Again, one that they should bring back, by the way. Next up, we were talking about Todd McFarlane. This is kind of an extension of the bit that we got from the last week's episode about from San Diego Comic-Con. I was going in two different directions in my head, and that didn't work out. So anyway, not only are we getting Spawn and Mortal Kombat, but we're also getting, we learned at San Diego Comic-Con, we're also getting 2 Todd McFarlane toys of Sub-Zero and Scorpion. So, in an interview with IGN recently, since San Diego Comic-Con, when asked about that, McFarlane said that he wants to go even further. He doesn't want to just do regular action figures, he wants to do fatality action figures, which is a really interesting prospect. How would you turn a fatality, which is an action, a moving thing, how would you turn that into anything other than maybe a statue? Like I can see doing a statue for the fatalities. But there's talks of maybe doing like interchangeable pieces for these and having motion. It's just really crazy interesting. I'm really excited to see if this happens, because he still has to prove to Warner Brothers and NetherRealm that he can follow through with the promise, that he's going to be selling enough figures that makes them money, which, I mean, it's a McFarlane figure for Mortal Kombat characters. It's a match made in friggin' heaven. So yeah, I'm definitely, if anything more comes of this, we will be talking about it on the show. Our last piece of gaming news has to do with Zombieland 2. Again, a movie that I'm very excited about, that we here on the channel are going to be talking about every time we get a piece of news, or once it comes out doing review. But also, it was leaked last week that there is apparently going to be a game that they are releasing in correspondence with the movie. This has never turned out well. I love this franchise a whole lot, so my hope is that if this is an actual thing that is going to be happening, my hope is that they've been working on this longer than they worked on the movie, because that is always the thing that kills the game tie-ins, is they start development on the game when they start development on the movie, and a game takes so much more time to develop that they try and rush it, and it's always broken and garbage by the time it comes out. Now, again, hopefully they've been in development on this game longer than the movie, but also the fact that we are in the modern age of gaming and DLC is a thing, maybe they can fix whatever's broken, because there's going to be something broken. It's just not going to be a proper game. But maybe they can fix whatever's broken when it releases after the fact. But that brings us to our last section of the episode, which is comic books, and we only have one thing in comic books, and it is Guardians of the Galaxy. Just a real brief thing. The new Guardians that we've talked about, the new team of the Guardians, needed a new spaceship, a new way to get around, and that way has been dubbed the Bowie, as in David Bowie. And David Bowie's estate officially gave it their stamp of approval on Twitter with a thumbs up and a retweet of the original announcement tweet, so that's pretty freaking awesome. That is the end of the episode. What did I miss? What should we talk about next time? Let me know in the comments down below. If, though, you want to go deeper into the conversation, jump over to the website, generallynerdy.net, or go over to the Patreon, patreon.com/generallynerdy, if you want to support the channel more directly. If you're falling behind in your nerd news and you want to catch up, you can click or tap that box right there to the left of my face to do that. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Click the like button if you like what I'm trying to do here. But before we do any of that, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.